You're very welcome back to another WedPrep podcast delivered to you by WeddingSuppliers.ie, where you can find wedding suppliers and wedding venues throughout Ireland and also plan your wedding. In this podcast, we are with Sean Reid from Langtons Hotel in Kilkenny. We're very excited about this podcast. Langtons has a little bit of a special place in my heart as well from playing here over the years. So, yeah, Sean, it's good to be here.
Thank you. Welcome back. Welcome back to Kilkenny.
So let's get started, right? We're in, and I've actually never been in this this room. So this is the set theatre that we're in now.
That's right. Set theatre. I think it's here from about 2009. Maybe the building work was completed. It was open just in time for the Kilkenny Arts Festival that year. Literally just in time for the first act. But it's a purpose built and designed theatre. It was designed by David Collins. He had a studio in London.
When this was built, was it purposely built for gigs? Because it's transitioned into where you do weddings here now.
Well, we do both. It took me a little bit of convincing, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
You know, when the plans were still on paper, it took me a little bit of convincing, saying, you know, folks, this is going to be great for a wedding. And I think when it was nearing completion, you know, that vision was there. So, you know, it's such a dynamic space now that, you know, we have had the likes of the Coronas on stage. We've had Pink Champagne on stage, I believe.
Yeah.
Do you know, and then, do you know, it's very popular as a ceremony venue.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that because look, you won Civil Ceremony Venue of the Year with the Wedding Suppliers Awards, and because you have a few different ceremony locations here.
We have. So we've got set theatre, which is the most popular. You know, you'd seat up to 230 for a ceremony in here. We've got our main ballroom, the Langton Ballroom.
How many can be seated in the main ballroom?
You know, we haven't tested that yet, but I think the most we've had for a ceremony in there is about 220, and there's still space. There's still space. A little bit of space. No, it's not a huge amount. You know, it's still nice and cozy, but the difference between the two, you know, the theatre has its own ambience. The ballroom then would be sort of brighter, breezier, if that makes sense, you know, with a big high ceiling.
A little bit more light.
Yeah. So, you know, it's down to personal choice then. But we've two smaller ceremony venues as well. We've got the Garden Conservatory, which conservatory is bright. That'll seat up to 100, and then we've got Harry's Bar that would seat maybe 35.
Okay.
You know, so there's various
a few
options.
different locations, and obviously with the shift in civil ceremonies now being predominantly on venues, and also some people do still prefer the ambience of the church. But even in here with the set theatre, there's a feel, you know, not a church feel, but it's close to that, and it's very, very warm.
To be honest, it is. You know, when the mammies visit, it does settle their opinions too. It does. Yeah, they're more comfortable.
It's kind of set up here for dining. So would you host weddings here?
We do
as well, and what could you seat?
So in here you'd seat up to 108.
Well,
the more typical range of numbers in here would be anywhere between 25 and 80 to 90. But we can seat
comfortable at that.
Yeah, or very comfortable at 108. Yeah. Very comfortable at 108. I mean, you know yourself, there was a shift a few years ago. Not so much a shift, but there's maybe the smaller weddings gained popularity. I find that's leveling off a bit
during
now.
COVID.
Yeah, but you know, we're able to offer a venue whether you've got 10 or 12 guests or you've 340 guests. Do you know, and everything is under one roof. So if you want to get married on site, you can. You have your ceremony venue, you have a dinner venue. We've a couple of options for drinks reception as well. You know, Bridie's Bar next door, which came just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to talk to you about Bridie's Bar because we went in for a cup of coffee, and that was the first time I was ever in it. And so the question I would have when someone comes to Langtons, when you first get an inquiry, what the attraction might be, do they ever ask, or would anyone ever have, not concerns, but you're a city venue ultimately, aren't you? So are people drawn to that, or sometimes do they have questions around that?
Well, a bit of both. You know, people would be drawn to it because it is a city venue. So, you know, in terms of accommodation for the guests, they're not limited, because especially Kilkenny, you know, we have a large number of hotels.
Absolutely. So even if you're at full capacity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a great bed and breakfast market in Kilkenny as well. So there's that availability for people. It's an easy city to get around with great taxi service. In fact, we're blessed. We have a taxi rank across the road from the front door.
You could fall in.
Exactly. So it's a very easy city to get around. It's not a huge city, but it is easy to get around. And we've, in terms of places to stay, it's brilliant. So, that certainly is a draw for people, that it's a city venue. And then, of course, there are the questions that come around it. What's the noise like? We're okay. We are on one of the busy streets, but in recent years, the council have upgraded the tarmac on John Street. They've fixed the banging manhole covers, so you don't have that.
So that would be the question from the couple. What would the noise problem be, like in morning or just in general?
Morning.
Yeah.
Morning.
Yeah, if you're worried.
And, there is, I would say, maybe 2 couples out of 50 might ask about, I suppose, the privacy of their wedding. There are concerns. Kilkenny's a busy city. Are people going to come in and crash my wedding? And the answer is no, they're not, because we control that.
Yeah.
And Kilkenny, I think Kilkenny is a fantastic city, and you don't get people, I suppose, misbehaving to that extent.
Yeah, no.
I'm not going to say it's never happened, but
you don't get wedding crashers.
No, we don't.
They come in.
Yeah, no.
You see them straight away out here, right?
Exactly, you do.
Yeah.
They stand out like a sore thumb, and the staff manage that.
Weddings, it's a rarity. Sometimes it does happen. You might see someone coming in and getting involved, but with Langtons, it's even coming here, it's kind of a bit of a maze sometimes anyway, to kind of figure your way around. So you wouldn't even know there was, like, from the front of the building, you would never see that ballroom at the back, And then if I wanted to talk to you skipping forward about the day twos, because I'm excited to talk about Bridies, and we'll put a little
Bridies is quite exciting, to be fair. Yeah.
Would you lose some of the congregation going into Bridies for a few pints on the pre-dinner? But they're right beside you.
No, that's another question.
You draw them in.
I think we've 10 or 11 bars in Langtons itself, and people say, our guests going to wander off. The answer to that is no.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the focus of the day is the wedding. Now, you could have 1 or 2 that might sneak off here, sneak off there. But you're not going to stop, even if you lock the doors, you're not going to stop them because they want to go. We don't lock the doors.
Yeah.
But, I think there's enough, there's more than enough at a wedding to keep people's attention, keep them focused on what's important, celebrating a marriage that day. So, no, it's not
the accommodation thing that you touched off. Because if certain venues are out kind of, not in the proximity of a town or B&Bs, where when you come into a city venue, you have all of that accommodation stuff. And if you do reach full capacity, you have all these other options within walking distance, and there's not buses and there's taxis and all of these other things that you need to think about. But on the day two then, like for you having Bridies there, and day two now being such a big thing, because it's like you're seeing it more than I am, but there's always a day two, right? Like,
I would say for majority of weddings there is, yeah. And a lot of those couples would, and I think, though I'm pretty sure that it is because we have Bridies.
Yeah. It's
and
it's class.
It's a huge attraction. Like I say, that was designed by the same man that designed the theatre, but his obviously. Eamon Langton gave him the brief that he wants, an Irish traditional bar.
And that's what it is.
He gave it
a sweet shop and everything.
There's a sweet shop, cake shop, a Bridies Bakery, as we call it. They offer, there's a daily variety of cakes and sweets and so on. And now wedding cakes too, so.
All right, okay.
Yeah,
I'd like to know that. And there's Bridies, is it a connection with bride, or is there a bridie?
No,
is there any history?
Would you believe? No, obviously Langtons is a family-owned and run hotel. A little bit of history.
It's always a nice touch.
It is, but a little bit of history. Langtons started off as I don't want to say a small pub, but it wasn't a huge pub, on John Street. Eamon Langton's parents bought it from a relation of theirs, and that was back in 1938. And it was a very successful pub, well known for food, well known for sort of, people passing through the city.
Still is, right, for food.
Still is, very much still is. But, I guess then through the 80s and the 90s, it was developed under Eamon Langton's leadership, of course, and into the 2000s, you know, I mean,
The innovation
the theatre
behind
and
it,
bridals
grew it.
came along.
Yeah.
You know, so it all, there's been a natural progression, really.
Yeah. And if we talk about the ballroom, so when someone inquires to Langtons, okay, and they come in, you get the inquiry, and sometimes a lot of couples, they generally kind of don't know what they want. And then you have all the different spaces. Would you look at basically on the capacity, obviously, because the ballroom, I mean, it's another fantastic room. All the rooms within Langtons, to have this, like I said to you with this set theatre, I thought there was a history behind this. And you were saying it was built from ground up. And you would think it's been here for 150 years. So they've really got that interior, that kind of medieval, and coming back to the Kenny being a medieval.
Without it being a manufactured atmosphere.
Yeah. It just feels it's been here for so long. And you have that in the ballroom as well. You've got like kind of marble kind of tiles and floors, big stage for the band, big long bar, which is a band's dream, isn't it? Because, you know, you're not losing the crowd anywhere. You're keeping them all contained. You know?
I think, I'd never actually thought of it like that, and I'm gonna use that in the future if you don't mind. But you know, a couple would come into us, maybe they've been to a wedding here before, and you know they have an idea in their mind of what they would like.
Yeah,
and we listen and we provide. If somebody comes in and you know there's questions that we ask just to get an idea of where they'd like to go, and then I suppose we can suggest what's going to be the best fit for them. But after that, we show them everything and they can decide for themselves.
Yeah, and you have the ability to do that with all the different rooms, and especially on the ceremony level as well. So in the main ballroom, what would be minimum requirement on seating, and what would be kind of maximum that you would like to get in at a comfortable number?
Pin a minimum on it,
yeah,
but we'd make a suggestion.
Yeah,
I think 80
is a nice.
Yeah, 80 upwards. So, you know, if we open it to its full extent, we can see 342 people.
Yeah.
But I think the typical range in the ballroom nowadays is sort of 100 to 180. That's your typical range. It is, isn't it? Sizes,
yeah. That's what we're seeing across the board now. And then for couples, which I think it's a magical aspect, having somewhere like Kilkenny, with them being a medieval city, for photographs, because now I can see you have your own gardens outside, so they can just simply walk out and get some still nice photographs.
Absolutely.
Is there a format that you recommend for photographers that they would go into the city? I've often seen the pictures outside Bridie's Bar where the couple are sucking on pints of stout.
That's the iconic photograph, I think, you know, with Bridie's shop front, bride and groom, or two brides or two grooms, you know. I think that's sort of the iconic wedding photo.
It is,
and I'm sure we've had couples have photographs there that didn't have their wedding at Langtons.
I wouldn't even think when you see that photograph, you do think it's in a small village in the countryside.
You do, not in the middle of a city.
Would couples like to use the fact that it is a medieval city? Would they venture off?
They do. They do. You know, I mean, we have part of the medieval city here at Langtons. You know, the wall out in the garden, that's part of the city walls dating back to a long time ago. We've, as you've seen, we've a little bit of informal garden space. Then we've got Bridie's garden. Back to Bridie's again. Bridie's garden is just, it's so cool. But, you know, photographers then, they have a great choice of where to bring people. Just across the street, there's a little laneway that brings you to the Buckley Gallery.
Right.
Fantastic old building. And down from that, you've got the old Carnegie Library. You've got the River Nore. And then, you know, if you're standing next to the River Nore, you get photos of the castle in the background.
The castle in the background, which is lovely.
Kilkenny Castle.
Yeah.
Biased, I'm sure, but it's simply the best castle in the country. The Castle Park, the Rose Garden, you know, so many of our couples go up there. It's stunning. Yeah. It really is stunning. But then we've got Rose House, which is an old almshouse, I believe, from back in, you know, medieval times. Fabulous garden, fabulous interior, you know, the real medieval look about it. We've the old courthouse, we've got the old Smithwick's Brewery.
And the list goes on.
The list goes
Smithwick's
on
Brewery,
and on.
I never would have thought about that. And is that still functioning?
Well, yeah, there's the Smithwick's visitor experience as well, which people from out of town love doing that tour. Not on a wedding day, of course, but, you know, it's great maybe for visitors doing it the day before, or even, dare I say, the day after, before they come back.
Before they come back, yeah.
You know, so Well, the list of things to do in Kilkenny, the list of attractions in Kilkenny it's a long list.
And can we talk then about the bridal suite then for where the couples stay? Can you kind of give us a little bit of description on that? Is it do you give them options in different rooms, or is there one kind of set room for the couple?
We have. Well, I think because of the fact that we're blessed with being a popular venue, we have 4 bridal suites.
Right. Okay.
So we've 2 of each style. So 2 styles of bridal suite. It's just to allow for couples to be able to stay the next day without having to change room.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we've 2 different styles, and we let couples choose. Then we as we did
just
just
obviously
yesterday.
the weddings back to back, which you often do. That's great. You don't have to kind of
we're not kicking people.
Kick people out.
It's so important.
Yeah.
So the 2 different styles. The one style, the John Street Suites, are literally just across the courtyard from the theatre here. So if you have your wedding in the theatre, it makes sense to stay in a John Street Suite. You're literally a hop, skip, and a jump,
Brilliant.
and you're over to
Jockey back across.
Exactly. There we go.
And can you talk through the other 3 bridal suites then?
Yeah. So there's 2 of those.
Okay.
And then there's 2 penthouses.
Okay.
The penthouses are, well, I mean, obviously they're top floor, very comfortable. You could spend a long time in one of those.
Days.
Yeah, you could. Obviously, you need room service to keep yourself sustained and so on. But yeah, beautiful rooms. Beautiful. Well, again, maybe a little biased, but they are.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about then on the kind of couples that are drawn to Langtons? Is there a form? Are they would there be a big sense of local family weddings here?
We do have that. I think if you were to, I suppose, write down a list of where our wedding couples come from, Kilkenny is going to be number 1.
Yeah.
Most definitely number 1. We have, I suppose we're blessed, I mean, with a great sense of community around Langtons. We have couples that get married here, but then they come back to us for their christenings,
there's a nostalgic
reunions, the confirmations. So from a Kilkenny point of view, Langtons couldn't, it's central maybe to their life celebrations. We have couples getting married here whose parents got married here.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to touch off.
Fantastic. I had a young lady came in the other day and she said, my parents got married here back in whatever year it was. That's just, it's fabulous. Their daughter's coming along. And then, she just threw into the conversation. We celebrated my communion here too. So we have a lot of that. I've seen, like I say, being here a long time, I've seen people that get married here and, you see their kids growing, they pop in for Sunday lunch and you think, wow, that's grown a lot in the last couple of months. You don't. So yeah, I mean, that's very important to us. But then maybe second on the list would be Dublin, and then after that it'll be our surrounding counties. We've great support from Carlow, from Laois, from Tipperary.
You're in a real hub here. And
like
we came down
there, WedPrep, Waterford.
45 minutes
That's
straight down the motorway, and it's great now with the new motorway structure.
It is, it's so easy to get around, and plus we've the railway station literally about 8 or 9 minutes walk away.
So there's no reason not to get married.
Great bus service. I can't think of any. Okay, well the only one is you've just got to find a date that suits you.
And do you find that tricky? So couples obviously have a date in mind for whatever reason, and obviously you can move, like obviously when you're coming and you're getting married, you have to be flexible on your date, right? And obviously in the peak months, your Julys and your Augusts is always going to be busier. And I often say to couples as well, like it doesn't have to be in the middle of the summer always to get married. And there is some flexibility on pricing as well. I know pricing changes all the time, so we don't really have to touch off that part. But obviously getting married midweek, it's a little bit more attractive, isn't it, on pricing wise? And then November,
we have discounts obviously for the winter months, January, February, March. We have a fantastic discount for January. Yeah, we really do. And it's a busy month for us.
It is, yeah.
And I think obviously the discount helps, but November is every bit as popular as August
I got married
is.
in November, and it's always a good month. Like November, it can be chilly, all right. But
it can, but I think if you have your wedding in the winter, you're expecting it to be cold. You absolutely know what the weather is going to be like, so you're dressed a little bit warmer.
The Irish summer we can't Today's a beautiful day, but
Yeah.
you can never guarantee.
Yeah. But I mean, the flip side of that, my wife and I had our wedding in Langtons 20 years ago. It was 34 degrees on a Monday in July.
So you're here 22 years. You got married here.
Married 20.
And it's great. It's a great credibility. It's great talking to someone from a venue because you know the place inside out. And you know, and in fairness, a lot of couples sometimes think it can be cliche with your responses, but every couple brings a different story to how you run the show, doesn't it?
I don't think I ever saw myself, maybe taking care of weddings for as long as I have been. I think I've been taking care of the weddings here since maybe about 2008 or 2007, could be something like that.
Yeah.
I never saw myself doing it for that length of time, but I think the reward I get from it is, and hearing people's stories, that's all part of the joy. But the reward is when they walk out of the door and, it's thanks, Sean, thanks to Langtons, thanks to the wedding team. Like, that was the best day ever. And that, you take that on board, and
it's the fundamentals to a couple on their journey, isn't it? Because they, from the venue point of view, if they're from the photographer, they're further down the chain, but you're with them, you're holding their hand right from the time they come through the door to into day two, and then they leave. So that it's really down to a good team to make sure that they feel comfortable.
And we have a great team.
Yeah,
anybody that's experienced it, I think the reviews are truthful.
Yeah,
they're written by couples who have actually had their weddings here. They write those reviews, and I think the biggest recurring compliment is thanks to the staff. The staff were brilliant. The staff were friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
testament to the longevity of what Langtons is. Well, Sean, look, it was a pleasure talking to you. And
pleasure talking to you.
Will you be here for another 22 years?
Let's see. I still, like I say, I still love it here. So
brilliant.
Thanks a million.